What's up, everybody? I'm Tim from Tim's School of Fish.
And I'm Jake with Uncommon EDC.
And joining us tonight is John Rusk from EMPEDC. How you doing tonight, John? Thanks.
Hey, guys, I'm doing real good. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, we appreciate you coming on.
Thanks for being here. Let's just shout out a few people in the chat. I see a lot of the regular folks here. Oh Father EDC, Jeff Jackson, Splitting Slices, Marco, Mike Reese. How you guys doing? And make sure that you guys, I know that most of you are subscribed to our moderators, Randy's WSG, Cheeto Bandito, Bluminati Ninja. If you guys are not subscribed to them, best moderators on YouTube, make sure you go subscribe to them. And also, where can they find you on social media, John?
So you can find us on Instagram, which is at EMPEDC. Also on X and Facebook at EMPEDC as well. And then we're going to start actually having some YouTube content, but it probably really won't be ramped up right now. I just do shorts periodically, and then they're very, very random in nature. But we do need to start kind of leaning towards, especially X and YouTube a little bit more. I don't know if you guys are too involved with what's going on with like the Instagram, which used to be such a wonderful place to grow, but there's been a lot of like sudden and very harsh censorship, at least in the knife and EDC community.
Yeah.
Where the people that follow us aren't allowed to see our posts. But if you turn post notifications on or sign up to, we have a news channel that we started through Instagram. Okay. Those are two great ways to stay in the know.
Yeah, I saw the other day on Instagram where somebody's Hanks, like a Hank maker, got censored for handkerchiefs. I was like,
yep,
Instagram has gone off the stinking rails. That's just crazy. So we're going to try to keep it to an hour because we value your time. So we're just going to jump right in. So the newest one you've got coming up is the Relative Bowie. Tell us about that. When do you expect that to be out? And what's different between that one and the original Relative?
So the Bowie is actually the original Relative. I think you have one of our drop points. That was part of the second production that we did. And we haven't really done too many changes to the overall knife. In fact, there was really just one change that we did to this new round of it, and that's just the hollow grind. And I'm not going to be able to show you guys on this camera, but it comes down to an even finer point, finer final edge than they did previously, and especially on the belt satin, because these are actually hand ground. Like somebody's actually holding this up to a belt when they grind them. To be able to achieve a more thin uniform edge was kind of something that was important to me because we kept the blade stock so thick. The cool thing about these guys is they're in transit here right now. They should hopefully be here by the end of the week. And then I'll send out a newsletter. And the goal right now is around May 11th. If they don't get here this week, then we'll postpone one more week till May 18th. But it's going to be they're going to be like, they're here and they're going to go up on the site pretty quick.
Awesome.
Yeah. And so mine, I have the drop point version. Mine is LMAX steel. What kind of steel did you use on this current run?
So we're doing CPM MagnaCut, and the heat treat on these guys is going to be around 63 for all the satin stonewash. And then for the DLCs, it'll probably be about 62 because a lot of people don't realize this, but DLC and PVD coating tends to cost you about a point on your heat treat because it's done after the fact, and it anneals that final edge a little bit. So we like to put a range on the site, so it'll say like 62 to 64 because it's plus or minus. But they should all be. Aztec's doing an amazing job with their heat treats for us so far. I haven't had any trouble with it, which is really cool because I know when MagnaCut first came out, people weren't sure how everyone was going to be using it, especially when it went to mass production because it was such like a custom knife or boutique knife thing until about this last year.
Right. And you mentioned something during that I think will be interesting for a lot of people. You mentioned they'll be up on the site. So it's not just pre-orders that coming in. You have enough to sell on the site. People who want to get in on it, they missed out on the pre-order.
This one wasn't a pre-order at all. Like I just put them into production and we're just dropping a ton of them on the website. So instead of having to order it from us and wait 6 months to get them, I'm trying to make that more of a regular thing. So like last year, I think we only did like 2, maybe 3 pre-orders and we had like 7 drops. And this year we might only do 2 pre-orders for certain projects. Like we did one for the Nimble. We might do one coming up in a few months for something else. And then we're going to have drops in between those where you don't have to wait for it. The knives will be here ready to go. fully, like, it funded the projects already, which is pretty awesome to be in a position to be able to do that. Because the goal is to finally move to a point where I can always just fund the runs, get everything here, then put them up. And so they'll just be instantly available. And I think the community really likes that. And it seems to be the way that the knife community that's the direction we're going.
Right. Yeah. I know from my perspective, I always enjoy that because I have no patience once I order it. I'm like, oh, I can't wait for that to get here. I can't wait 3 months.
Yeah. That was like the Devo Stout version 2 was a pre-order. I think I ordered that, and I love the knife. I mean, but I ordered it in August and it came not too long ago, maybe a month ago or something. That was a long wait. You know what I mean?
Dude,
I was like,
Best Tech has been super behind on their production schedules. Yeah, to the point where I think they're changing them now. It used to be 90 to 110 days, and now they're like 150 to 190 days. Which at least they're falling in that window. They were always outside the old window. So, and it's hard when you're trying to create this business where you have to have products that, you know, from the day that I start the design, 4 months to prototype it, then, you know, a month to make your decision. So now you're 4 or 5 months in, and then 6 months to get the actual. So you're a year in for like just one project.
Wow. Now on this run of the Bowie, I see you've got some new handle materials. Is this the first one working with the new handle materials?
Yeah, so this is the first time we'll do fat carbon. So we have the gold dark matter and the gold camo carbon that's going to come out, and then we have Ultim. So this will actually be our first knife using Ultim. Like we also offered it for the Nimble, but this will be the first production that's landed here where we've done the Ultim. And I wish I had one in my hand because we did something really cool with the Ultim. I posted a picture the other day and asked if folks noticed that. So the whole show side on that version of the Relative is Ultim. And if you look up around the pivot, you'll see there's a little tiny liner that's been added that just sits right behind where the pivot is. So it catches the stop pins because my stop pins all float on the inside with the blade. Yeah. And so I wanted to kind of, because the Relative is such a beefy knife, I'm like, I want to reinforce it. And it was also something I hadn't seen done before. I hadn't seen anybody just have like a little insert there to catch your stop pins and just add that extra strength. And the way we did it, there was no extra screws added. It's a really tight fit precision cut part that just fits into the slot. Like I said, I wish I had one to show you guys because I know it's a nerdy thing, but I kind of thought it was cool.
Yeah. Right.
No, I think it's cool. I'm looking at it right now. What's your gut tell you? Which one's going to sell out first? I know which one I like, but and I know the knife community's fickle and that can change in 5 minutes. What's your gut tell you the one that's going to go quick?
It's always the black and bronze. Every time.
Yeah.
Without fail. Every time I think I made enough of them, and I made a lot of them this time. So you guys prove me wrong.
Nice.
That makes it easy.
Yeah, and then I think the fat carbon will go pretty quick. I didn't make as many of those. There's only about 100 of those. Yeah. And the Ultim, I'm not sure. Ultim, like it's one of the things I did it because I enjoy the material, but I never know. Like we did like the Ultim little knuckleheads, and those weren't too popular. So who knows? Like I think it ebbs and flows. I think either you love that material or you're just like, gross yellow.
Yeah, for sure.
Jake likes it. I don't.
I do.
So,
I have some Ultim with me right now.
It's a great material. I mean, especially with all the strengths and properties it has, it's a really great material to use. And I've got buddies like Daryl Caston makes that OTF. The whole thing's out of Ultim.
Yeah, really cool.
And I have one. I was skeptical if it was. I was like, is that going to be strong enough? And me and him had a whole conversation about it. And he sent me one, and it's great. It's a fun material. It weighs absolutely nothing.
Yeah, that's really cool because like even the big companies like Heretic and Microtech are using Ultim, but they're not using the full frame Ultim. You know, they have Ultim inlays on the sides. They haven't gone full Ultim yet. So it's cool that he was able to get that done. He's always doing such weird and cool things.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I've followed him for a long time. He's probably one of my favorite knife makers. Like I have like a whole section in one of these cases behind me that's just all him. He's got like half a shelf.
That's awesome.
Thank you, Beef, for Beef for Baron as one of our regulars. Thank you for that, Beef. Appreciate it.
Yep, much appreciated. So your first design was a Nimble, and you've obviously done a lot of different variations of the Nimble. Are we going to continue to see new versions of it, or maybe just new configurations of the existing versions?
So, I mean, I'm always going to bring back the original one at least once a year, just because it's such a staple. Like this, yeah, this was my first full-on knife design. Before this, I had done a blade for an OTF that I did not design. It was called the Slenderman, and I had done, I think I have one right here. I had done a Warncliffe blade for this little OTF, and that was like my experience with knife design. And the Nimble was the first thing that was like, this was completely like my concept, my idea. And it was really cool. I sent it off to a couple of different OEMs. I ran prototypes with Best Tech and QSP. And we actually ran like 3 rounds of different prototypes with them before we got it to feel the way I wanted it to feel, where it was actually very easy to manipulate and you could flip it all 3 ways. And I started teasing it in 2020 because we'd only opened up in, I think, September of 2020 is when we opened up the website. May of 2020 is when EMP, the concept, kind of started to come into being. I'll actually tell you that story after I get done with talking about the Nimble. So got the prototypes in, realized it was finally going to work. I had teased like some pictures of some renders on Instagram, and at that time I think we had like 100 followers. Like nobody knew who we were. We had done the OTF, and that did pretty well. And to the point where I decided that we had sold enough of the OTFs that I could fund the Nimble project. And we opened up a pre-order for the Nimble in March. And I think we sold like 40, maybe 50 when it was all said and done with stragglers coming in. And the knives got here in May. I was able to get like 10 or 15 of them sent ahead so I could send them out for review. And I sent one to like Slicey Dicey was still a reviewer back then. Metal Complex, I think Lefty got one. And everybody loved it. And what I hadn't realized when I made this was that nobody had done the 3 flippers thing up until that point. Like it was a brand new thing. And so it was so fresh and so new that it did so well. Like we had those initial 40 or 50 orders. I delivered them. The following Saturday, I put them up, the other like 300 of them up on the website. And by Monday morning, they were gone. And that was, I had no idea. I'm like, it's going to take me months to sell all this. And then what am I going to do for my next project? I was absolutely floored. And because of the little bump in momentum that we got from this, it let me do Nimble liner locks, Nimble tees, start the Nimble X, the larger project. And we just kind of started trying to get onto a roll with it. And we were able to do very successful pre-orders after that. And so I feel very fortunate to have had that experience with the community, that they just kind of jumped behind this, which was really cool.
Yeah, that is awesome. Yeah. How far out would you say that you're planning models? So like, are you deep into 2025 at this point in terms of
Q1?
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So pretty far out.
I would like to be all the way into 2025. I mean, in a way, you're still making this up as I go. So how EMPEDC started was I actually lost my job in May of 2020. Like, and that, if you don't know if you remember, but that was everything's getting locked down. Freaking nobody's hiring. And initially, I wanted to just open up like an online retailer, like an eKnives kind of thing, and I just wanted to buy knives from other companies and resell them. And that was kind of where the Everyman's Pocket kind of name came in, the EMPEDC. And so I started looking into that and realized very quickly that I was way too broke to try to do such a thing. And then I found, so I'm like, okay, I'm going to look another direction and see if there's something that I can find that's interesting and unique to import that we can resell. And I still kind of stuck with the knives, and that's where I found the OTF with Nemo knives. And we did it in an interesting way where I actually imported them where the blades didn't fit the handles, and I had to sit there with a little grinder and fit all the blades into all the handles, so they were incredibly snug. Because it was a great product, but the samples that I got from them, the blade was kind of loose, and I was like, well, if we're going to do this, we're going to do it. And that was one of the best decisions, but it was the biggest pain in the ass thing I've ever done in my life, because I did not have the right tool for the job. I was using like a little work sharp Ken Onion grinder to do this, which any of you guys know what you need to make knives, that's not the right tool. but I did it. And then we launched the knives, those first round of OTFs in September. And mind you, I've never made a knife in my life before. I've never done a website before. I've always worked at just companies and just did what I was told to do. It's middle management. And about a month goes by, we sell one knife. A few more weeks go by, we sell one more knife. And then it was about 2 weeks after we sold that second knife, I woke up, it's a Saturday morning, and we sold it was between 30 and 50 somewhere. I can't remember the exact number. I should, but I don't. But I was floored. I was like, okay, what happened? Did my website crash? This is weird. And then I kept getting email, ding, sale, ding, 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 ding. And I don't somebody must have done a little review on one of the original ones on Reddit, I believe. And it just kind of took off. And within that next following week, we were completely sold out of that first run of the OTFs. And then I was able to actually design the blade for it and do that little Warncliffe that I showed you guys, which was this. Oh, where's my camera? There we go. Which was the Slenderman OTF, this Warncliffe blade I designed for it. And then the handle design, not my design. So we did a couple rounds of these Warncliffes, and that's what funded the initial run of the Nimbles.
Nice.
So and go ahead.
I was going to say, I would imagine you aren't hand grinding the Pulse OTF blades, right?
Oh, no. Although we do have some that are hand ground by BGM knives for the USA made Pulse OTF. So we did manage to get some that are done, but no, I'm not doing that. No. Honestly, eventually I would love to do some mid-tech stuff, build out a workshop so I can do that. But it would be in very small batches. I'm not going to sit there and try to slap together 300-400 knives again.
Right.
Not fun. I like to kind of conceptualize the stuff and create it. And my favorite part of doing the job is honestly the prototyping phases where we get to create something new. Because it's just kind of getting to experience something that you came from your imagination, and then all of a sudden it's in your hand.
Right.
Which is I can't accurately describe how cool that is sometimes, especially when you nail it. Because there's been plenty of times when after months of planning and prepping and trying to get prototypes done, you receive it and you're just like, why?
Yeah. Right.
So when you come up with a concept for a design, does it start on paper? Do you start with a drawing, or do you sit down with an AutoCAD program and engineer it?
Sketch every time. Always. Really? I have a sketch pad. I should have brought it in my office with me. But I literally have a sketch pad, and I use zebra pencils. I don't know why I can't seem to draw with anything but the zebra F301 pencils. And then literally with that and a ruler. Sometimes I'll actually use I'll take parts of the Nimble and I'll go, okay, I want to make a knife that's this size. So I'll measure off exactly off of the Nimble with pencil, and then change everything about it on the paper. And then from there, we'll go into CAD. And then I have some engineers that I work with to help me make sure that things are correct in certain ways, because I'm only so-so AutoCAD and Fusion. I have people that help me out with the textures to make sure that things are lining up on both sides correctly. There's a lot of little aspects of this industry that you don't necessarily think of, and especially when you don't come I do not come from an engineering background at all. The first round of the Nimble was literally hand drawn on graph paper inside and out, and I'm sending pictures to different OEMs and I'm on Fiverr trying to find somebody that can put it into Fusion for me.
Wow.
Yeah, that's wild.
So we got a question from one of our viewers. I told you before we were on the air that my first EMP EDC knife was the Nimble T2, and it was G-Ball Greg there that really turned me on to your knives. And he wants to know if you're going to do a full-size liner lock Warncliffe or a full-size relative style Warncliffe or sheep's foot.
So yes. kind of both of those at the same time, if that makes sense.
Okay.
I think I teased a sketch of this on my personal Instagram about a month ago. It's actually going to be renamed the Slim. It's a little bit more narrow than the Nimble W, and it's a little bit longer than a relative. So it's like a 3.6, almost 3.7 inch blade. It'll be sheep's foot, and it'll have all my usual design elements. Like you'll have the oval shaped ball milled hole, the long jimping, You'll have the same swooping pocket clip, but it's going to be a hollow ground sheep's foot blade. And we're going to do a couple different versions of it. I don't want to talk too much about the project because we're actually going a different kind of direction with how we're going to achieve it. But it's going to be a liner lock version of it, and it's going to be pretty dope when we come out with it. I'm pretty excited about it.
Nice.
Awesome.
Another viewer question, and we kind of talked about this a little bit before we were on the air, but how long does it take from sketch to sending the design to the OEM?
So, I mean, there are I'm probably going to ruin somebody's day by saying this, but there are OEMs you can just send a sketch to. But from sketch to sending a design to an OEM, typically it's going to be 1 to 2 months if I'm like sticking to it. Sometimes longer. Sometimes I'll come back and forth with design. Like there's some that I still have been tinkering with for like a year, and I don't love it, and I'm not willing to invest the thousands of dollars it takes to see, if it's going to work. And then sometimes you bang something out, and you just the second, like the warm clip we were just talking about. Actually, I sat down and I drew that. I think I drew that in 30 minutes. And later that night, I already had it in CAD, and then I sent it off immediately and like, hey, let's start getting pricing and specs and like caught pricing out materials for this, because it's gonna be awesome. And so sometimes you just kind of know, and at least at this point, having done this for almost 4 years now, you get to a point where when you're on the track of getting something right, you get after it, because time is your biggest hurdle in this business. Me and the boys were talking just for a second before we hopped on, and I was saying it can take a year from the time that you put a sketch on paper. You got to get through prototyping. Prototyping takes 3 to 5 months, depending on the OEM, and that's just to get a couple samples. And you're praying that when you get it back, you got everything right on that first try, which generally does not happen. So then you're 2 to 3 more months with revisions. And then from the day you put your deposit in to make your mass production, you're anywhere from 4 to 6 months on average. So you're anywhere from a year to 18 months for one project.
Wow. Yeah, so you got to be juggling a lot of things at the same time, right? You got a lot of different stuff going on at the same time to keep them coming and not keep them waiting.
You're roboting a little bit on my end, Tim.
Yeah, a little bit.
Sorry.
But I think we
you definitely have to start stacking your projects up. I think I have 6 productions going right now. By the end of the month, I'm hoping to have 2 more, so get at least 8 going. And then if everything goes to plan, which it won't, and they'll all start coming 1 month after the next. But what usually happens, and I'm probably cursing myself by saying, is I get all these things started, and then instead of coming, over a 4-month period or 5-month period, they all come within 60 days.
Right.
And just boom.
Right.
We've heard that before. So how many, I know you can't tell us exactly what's coming out, but how many more do you hope are going to be dropping in 2024?
We'll have at least 5 more projects drop this year.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because we have there's stuff that I've been public about. Just I don't shout it from the rooftop. So we have the Relatives coming up. You guys know about.
Yeah.
Then we'll have the original Pulse OTFs coming back, which are the Warncliffs. These ones are the overseas machined. And while I do have to put these together, they will fit when they get here. And they're going to be the Warncliffs, and then I have a new version of this that's coming out as well. And then about a month or so after that, we're having the USA version coming back, which we're going to have the Tontos back, and then we're going to have a new Warncliffe version of this. But there is quite a difference between the two as far as like how beefy the blades are. The USA made one's a little bit longer than the overseas one. And we did some stuff with Axial to make this project possible. This knife is probably the most collaborative project I've done in a long time, because we basically used parts of the Shift framework to keep the machining process in line with what they could do to make things happen in a timely manner, so that we didn't have to interrupt all of their presettings and all their fixturing and stuff like that. So we could use some of those same processes to make the project happen.
Right. And we have another viewer question. I'm not sure if you'll be able to answer both of them. I know you already mentioned the USA OEM is going to be Axial. Can you talk about
Yep.
the overseas one?
Nope, can't.
Okay.
Sorry,
Yeah,
that's
no
part
problem.
of my contract.
Yeah.
If I could, I would.
Yeah, no problem.
Because they're definitely a very good OEM. But Axial's doing the USA made one, and then after that we'll have the Nimbles, and then you'll start to see some of those other new projects that I haven't. You'll see the Warncliffe coming up, and then some other stuff.
Awesome.
Nice.
And then, do you have any plans for licensing out, or all your design's going to stay EMP/EDC?
So right now I am working on a design with Concept. Whether they decide to license it or not, it's going to happen, because if they decide, right now, as of now, it looks like they're going to take it. If not, I'm going to just pay them to make it for me, because it's pretty dope. It's another version of a Nimble. It's going to be a 3-inch size Nimble. And we're going to do the, I'm not going to tell you all of the details about it, but we're going to do that leaf-shaped blade like I did for the original Nimble Axe is going to be. So it's going to be a compact version of that, which is something we haven't launched yet. I was hoping to have the prototypes in hand before Blade Show, but we're a little bit behind, so I'll get those. Maybe I'm doing like the Pacific Northwest custom invitation. That's a long one. In Seaside, I should have them by then.
Very cool.
So I know on the relative Bowie that's dropping soon, you've got some new handle materials. Are there any steels that you haven't worked with yet that you'd like to work with?
So I'd like to do some Fordite stuff. I absolutely love the material, but I haven't found it good. There's some materials I'd like to work with, but finding good and consistent sources of it are difficult. Like I like Mokume is probably one of my favorite materials out there, and I've only been able to find enough of it to do small, like we did like 50 clips for the relatives. I wanted to do relatives where we did like a whole inlay scale. I'd even done a prototype doing it. And then the company that I was trying to buy the Mokume from, they're like, yeah, we can make you enough. I'm like, that's like enough to make 10 knives. I need to make like 50 or 100.
Right.
And because the cost of some of these exotic materials only makes sense if you're making a specific amount. Like if I'm going to make, like when I started making the Damasteel stuff, I'd only make like 10 or 15 pieces. And it was just because I honestly didn't know if people would buy it. And it's really expensive to make. It starts to level itself out when you do it a little bit more at scale. It's still expensive to make. But it makes a little bit more sense when you can buy the material in bulk versus I just need one little bar of it, because you might buy a bar for like to make like 4 or 5 knives, and that bar might cost within $50 of the bar that it costs to make 7 knives. Well, now you just got 3 more knives worth the material for $50, and that's not the machine time and all the other aspects of it, but from material costs, there are these little sweet spots that you can find.
Yeah,
that makes sense.
So when I look at your knives, I can see your design language, certain things in your knives, and I'm like, oh, that's John Rusk. How would you describe your design language, and do you have an EMP/EDC signature?
Oh yeah, for sure we do. Or at least that's been kind of the goal, is to have it. I would love for people to just see, like the second they see, honestly, that cutout on a knife, they should just know that it's from us, because nobody else does it. But so I would say I would describe my design style as kind of sleek and aggressive. And then the elements that you'll find pretty much carried across almost all of my knives is you're always going to have the oval cutout. In general, you're always going to have that ball milling around it, either both sides or at least one side. If it has a fuller, obviously it's going to go all the way to the end of the blade, like what happens on the relative. But you'll still find the ball milling behind the hole, which a lot of people, actually nobody does, which I would love it if nobody continued to do that. And then you're going to have really long jimping, which I've only ever seen like 1 or 2 other makers actually do, aside from myself, which is carried out to 3/4 of the blade or almost the full length of the blade, like the relative or the Nimble W. And then we have the triangle pocket clip that I do, which we are going to be making an adaptation on this. We're going to start doing it where the screws are only coming in from the underside. So I'm just going to take full advantage of the real estate.
Nice.
And I did it because it was iconic. It was something I could do that I hadn't seen other folks do, and a pocket clip that was this specific shape. And it also gave me a fun place to play with, you know, anodizing and fun materials. Was kind of the whole thinking behind this pocket clip design. And then on almost all my knives, with the exception of the OTFs, you're going to find a pretty large finger choil. So if you have an adult man-sized hand, you can actually grab your knife.
Yeah.
Now you have a pretty extensive collection outside of your own knives. We were talking about that a little bit. I see some like Null knife stickers back there. What else do you like to carry besides EMP/EDC?
So it's funny. I will carry Null knives. Let me see. I grab a couple. Why not? To grab a couple of my favorites real quick. So I actually carry a Null knives rating once or twice a month. Probably one of my favorite go-tos is Winterblade Co-Factor. This knife is just witchcraft, and one of my favorites. Brian is an absolute maniac. I really love his design. He keeps teasing those magnetic OTFs, and I'm like, dude, just make me one. Just tell me, just send me a bill. Just send me one. Like,
keep my card on file.
Yep. And then NCC knives, Nick Chuprin. This is the BBM. This was like a grail for me. And I finally got it last year. Then I'll like Sparrow Knife Co's. I have a custom Strix. That's like one of my favorite knives in the whole collection. And then I have most of everything Custom Knife Factory has put out, at least that I could get my hands on. I don't have any of the Rasanti stuff, but I've got lots of Evos.
Nice.
When it comes, and then go ahead.
Oh, good. I was gonna say, when it comes to EDC, are you mostly on the knife side? I know you have some other products on the site, like your knuckleheads. I think you did a collab with Mike Cruz, right?
Yeah, so we did the Cruiser wallets. We're actually going to bring these back probably next month. And we did a change. They have let's see if I can pull this off. They have a little atom embossed on this side, and it's going to actually be embossed in gold to kind of match the stitching to make it pop a little bit more.
Nice.
And so we're doing the Cruisers with the 3 loops again, in black and in brown. And then I just dropped a bunch of the Kenny knuckleheads. We did like some Okume ones. We did these really cool beads, and these are all made by Griffworks down in Texas. So these are all USA made. It's Vegas Forge, Mokume, and like the titaniums from USA Metalworks. And so I try to source whenever I do an American project. I try to source everything here in the States as well, or from vendors that are purchasing from state producers. At least if it's something made in the United States, which is getting harder and harder to find, sadly.
Right, for sure. And they do some really cool work too, Griffworks.
Oh, dude, he's so talented. He's going to do some parts for me for some OTS, like some buttons and some clips and some stuff that Axial's not quite ready to do yet. Do some exotic materials.
Nice.
Have you ever thought about doing any pins or flashlights? Is that even something you want to get into?
It is eventually. It's just because so right now, like, sometimes I don't make things unless I can think of like a better or cooler way to do it, if that makes sense. Like, and cooler in my opinion, right? Because this is all subjective.
Right.
And like, so like right now I have a favorite pen, and it's the Grimsbow Saga. I love this pen. I don't know how I could make a better one, but making an EMPEDC pen is probably something I will do eventually. Flashlight, I would love to do. I'm just not sure logistically how that works. It's something I'd have to learn a lot more about before I've done. And I've had a couple buddies do them and not have the greatest success, which this may sound stupid from a business standpoint, but when I do side projects, when I do knuckleheads and I do cruiser wallets, or I do pouches and beads, those things are not what supports or sustains the business. There is not, because we're not doing a lot of volume. So when you do something that's $30 or $15, or even something that's $100, you have to do a considerable amount of volume for it to make a lot of sense. So I approach these projects from, is it something fun? Is it something I would like to carry? And then just we're gonna make 100 of them. We're gonna make 50 of them. We're gonna throw them up on the website and see who else would like to join. Because I want a Kenny knucklehead. I would like a cruiser wallet. I would like a bead for my knife. So I kind of approach it from that standpoint. So it's less about financial gain and more just about for kicks.
Yep, that makes sense.
So that kind of begs the question. So you were talking about having to do a certain amount of volume for it to be, make physical sense, business sense.
Mm-hmm.
Ever thought about doing any budget versions of your knives in 14C, anything like that? Is that something we're looking at in the future?
Yep, you should see it this year.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I just have to make like 1,500 of them.
Yeah,
but yeah, that's a project you're going to see coming up, and I think people are going to be pretty stoked about it because the only reason I haven't done a budget knife up until this point was because when we did it, I wanted it to be something new, and I wanted it to not feel like a budget knife.
Right.
So the goal is to try to keep the project below $150 retail, and I know that's not going to be budget to everyone, but you have to remember I'm a designer doing an OEM project, so I can only get my cost to a certain level. So the markup's not that much. It's like if I'm paying $100, you can pay 120, 140 for the knife, depending on margin. But we are gonna have a product come out. Right now, it looks like it's going to be 14C 28N. I would love it to be 154 CM. So we're still kind of negotiating, but hopefully that'll go into production in about 8 weeks.
Yeah, that's awesome. When it comes to designs, has there been any particular
audio jacked up? Can you guys hear me?
Yeah,
I can hear you now.
But you're a little bit like robotic, it sounds like.
Okay, somebody said my sound cut out. I'll fix it. You guys
Yep, you are.
Yeah, when it comes to design, has there been any particular challenges, or what's been the most challenging thing with going from paper to an actual prototype?
Wow, when I want to do things that won't work. Like the OTF was probably the longest. Like this took almost 2 full years because I wanted the tolerances to be so ridiculously tight. That they were like, we can't do that. Well, we can't do that. Well, there's not going to be airflow because the air has to get out of the way. So in one of the early ones, we ran into a problem where it would open up just fine, but when you retracted the blade would actually bounce out because it was so tight that the air that it was compressing was springing the knife back out of. And then we're like, okay, do we need to put a hole in the back end? Well, that would look stupid and just suck dirt into the knife. And so we ended up adding these little tiny channels on the inside of the knife, and that was actually a suggestion by one of the engineers at Best Tech when we were doing early prototyping. And then we had to move the project, which sucked. But so we ended up going through 4 rounds of prototyping before we finally got a version that would work and that had as minimal blade play as possible, because there's only like a couple thousandths of room in these guys, which is really cool to be able to do it.
Right. And especially at the price point that you're doing it at, when you look at like the Deadlock and like even Microtech's new, where they have no play, the prices they're charging are insane.
Doing zero blade play it's a freaking art. And the other thing is finding a way to do it that hasn't been done before. Because like the Deadlock does it in a pretty creative way, and it mostly has to do with sideways pressure.
Right.
The way that the blade kind of cocks over into the handle. There was a knife by Shrike that did it, which had these really cool little clamps that folded under the blade and like a V-shaped ramp that also there's so much like crazy people out there with design. But there's only a few ways to remove the blade play from the knife. And I suspect that Microtech did kind of a hybrid way that Hawk does it. They have to be jamming it over to the side somehow and then catching it. So they just have to be catching the tang of the blade at that last possible second, or they move the lock. I have no idea how the internals of that one work yet, but I'm pretty sure I wouldn't be surprised if I pop one open.
Right.
But a lot of that stuff is patent protected. So that's another thing you have to be careful about in this business is like, are your designs unique? Are you using mechanisms that are like common use mechanisms that you don't have to worry about patents, or are you creating a new mechanism that you need to try to protect with a patent, which I'm not that smart, so I don't have any of those, at least not yet. But it's in one of those ways you got to balance things. And I think we did a really great job with the original Pulse OTF, because at least from the reviews and the feedback we got on it, people were pretty blown away by how good a job we were able to do with this knife. And when we can finally bring this version of it stateside, it's going to happen. It probably won't happen for another year or two, but it's going to happen.
Nice.
Yeah. So I always, can you guys hear me now?
Yeah, much better now.
Okay. I kicked her offline. Everybody, you can simmer down in the chat. It's because the knife was get off. I was on first. I asked this question of everyone, and I know it's a hard question. It's like picking a favorite child. Do you have a favorite knife design that you've designed?
Oh yeah, the Nimble, hands down.
Yeah. Why is it your favorite?
Well, and the reason I designed this knife was I'm a little bit ADD. Well, we're kind of all over, and I designed it to be something to fidget and goof around with, part tool, part toy. Which some people feel a certain kind of way that I said that, but that's what it is.
Right.
And my like EMPEDC wouldn't exist if it wasn't for this knife. So like I owe everything we've accomplished today to the success of this specific design. And I get to continue to iterate and play with the design. Like we have another version of the Nimble actually working on right now, which we've done some cool stuff. Like you're gonna see different method of flipper tab. We're gonna see a couple other really cool adjustments to it. And if you look at a lot of the rest of my work, it is actually very derived from this design. I mean, if you look at a relative, it's named that because it's essentially a Nimble with no back flipper. Like that's basically what it is. Now it's got a way more comfortable finger choil. It's got a bigger, beefier design. It's got the hollow grind. It's got the magnica. So there are plenty of differences, but you can see exactly where all the design language came from, which was started with this knife.
Right.
Very
And
cool.
what would you say? I know you kind of started with the story of how you started designing knives, but what got you into knives in the first place?
I'd always kind of liked them, and people are probably going to feel a certain kind of way about this, but I got I like switchblades. I always thought they were kind of fun, and originally I just had like some side opener switchblades, and they came from like gas stations and like junk balls, so they were nothing fancy, nothing like refined at all. And then I was at, I want to say it was like the B&I out here, which is kind of like a strip mall kind of thing.
Right.
And there was a OTF knife they had in there, which was, I would later find out basically a clone of a Microtech, but I had no idea what the hell a Microtech was back then. And so I had this OTF and I thought that thing was like freaking magic. And then I looked into it, looked up out the front knives, and I kind of started getting into those. So I started collecting out the front knives. And then I discovered knife YouTube, because I kind of go all in whenever I start like a new hobby. And so I started watching like Jim Skelton, Metal Complex before he was Metal Complex. He was doing little knife reviews like in his backyard. And Nick Shabazz, and I would see these really cool things that I couldn't afford. And then every now and then they'd have a cool thing like a Ferrum Forge knife, or they'd have like a Civivi or a Wii or something from not QSP, but I forget, CGRB, or like they'd have some of those cooler knives that those guys make.
Right.
And I'd grab those. And then as I got deeper in, then I'd started to buy Microtechs, Heretic knives. I got a bunch of Guardian Tacticals, and I just kind of started to be a new thing. Like whenever I get like a bonus at work, it'd be a new knife day, or like, I'd buy about a new knife every month or so, and then that steadily grew into every week. But and I was at like the new knife about once a week, once every other week point when the crap hit the fan in 2020. And then so I was very much engaged into the hobby. I just opened up I'd never done social media. I just started a personal Instagram page right around that time too, and I was taking my pictures of my knives on a handkerchief and getting into that part of the hobby, because being a father, like I got 2 kids, I got a wife, so it was something nice that I could do in my house, right? I could play with my stuff, I could take a cool picture of it, share it with the community, say, hey, check this out, this is, I got the new whatever. Not that I had any followers or anybody knew about that page. People still don't know about that page. I have a personal page. There's about 2,000 people that know it exists. So that's kind of what made me stop and think when I was in a position where had to decide, do I want to go and work for someone else again?
Yeah.
And see how far that takes me, and do the corporate thing, which, I'm sorry if I insult anyone with saying this, but whenever you work for a corporation, you get promoted to your highest level of incompetence. It's kind of the nature of the beast. Like, if you're good at your job, you'll get promoted until you're bad at your job. And then shit falls apart.
Yeah.
So I decided I didn't want to take that track. And like I mentioned, I was like, well, I'll just go ahead and sell knives. And the family looked at me like I absolutely lost my damn mind. Turns out I didn't. And so it was a pivot, and it was one that I'm glad, like, losing that job was the best damn thing that ever happened.
Yeah. That's awesome.
For sure. And I just realized earlier when I linked to your Instagram account, I linked to the versatile one.
That's funny.
Yeah.
Oh, so you were able to scroll down and see the really rough sketch of that knife.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I see that here.
What's been the biggest challenge for you as a knife designer? The most difficult thing to overcome?
So it's twofold. It's time, but in two ways. So time is in, like we talked about, how long it takes to actually do a project. So I'm building momentum. We had done a really good job up until about the spring of last year, and then I did this really dumb thing and decided to get a house for my family. Because I didn't share that when we first started this, I lived in one of the crappiest apartments you'd ever seen, and below us was like a biker bar, a tattoo studio, and a vampire store. I shit you not. Like, those were below my and I was the only apartment. Like, it was rough. And so it was time to finally, like, get a house and settle in. And so because of that, we ended up going a couple of months without starting a new project. So we ended up taking this dip and kind of feeling we worked really hard to gain that momentum, and we just threw it right out the window when we did this. It's a good thing, but regaining the momentum has been tricky, and we're just now catching back up from that almost a full year later. So it goes to show you how much just stopping for even a 2-month period of time can impact you on your following year. And then the flip side of it is, because it takes so long for things to happen, I have an incredible amount of free time, which I feel really blessed for, but I sometimes don't know what the hell to do with myself. Like, it's not like I can just go off and party and play, because I'm not this millionaire, this crazy rich person. No, I'm still your average guy. I just only have to work hard when the knives get here, if that makes sense, right? The rest of my job is taking pictures, doing social media, which is why, like, we need to start being more engaged. It's one of the reasons I'm here today. I'm like, you know what? I have this extra time and I'm not using it effectively to, even reach out and just engage with the community more. I got to this point where it's more just like, hey, look what the next cool thing I'm making is. And that's, I think about all the people that I follow and how I like to engage with them. And I'm like, why am I not engaging with everyone else in the way that I'm engaging with my fellow makers?
Yeah, that makes sense. And to be honest with you, I have no idea what a vampire store is. Do you mean literal vampires? Or? Lady thought she was a vampire.
Huh.
Sounds like a lot of fun. Fun apartment.
Yeah. Well, and on the middle floor was a ballet studio, so throw that mix in.
A lot of fun characters, it sounds like.
Yeah.
I saw a video the other day where they're having, like, vampire facials or something, like, where people were getting fake tattooed on their face. That's the thing now.
No, Charlie. Her lady's name was Charlie, and she wore fangs. She was super nice, but creepy as hell.
Yeah, I bet.
Vampires usually are pretty nice, I think. All the ones I've met.
You didn't let her babysit the kids? It wasn't like that? She wasn't that nice?
No. Nope. I'd be afraid she was going to sacrifice him or something. She looked exactly like what you're thinking whatever you're thinking in your head. Yes.
Yeah.
That's funny.
Well, congratulations on the house.
Yeah.
It had to be done.
It had to be done, yeah. It had to be done.
So, are we ever going to get an EMPEDC or slip?
Oh, you're roboting again, my friend.
think it was gonna say, are we ever gonna see an EMP fixed blade or slip joint?
Definitely a fixed blade at some point down the line. The design's already done. It's just one of those projects that hasn't been a priority right now. It's basically a fixed blade modeled after the Nimble. Obviously, there's no hump or finger trail there, but it's just basically looks exactly like a Nimble, just with a thinner handle, but this exact kind of spear point blade. And it'll happen. I'm still thinking around with the sheath design for it, or if I can integrate the pocket clip somehow. But it'll happen. It's just like the folders take priority. I've never carried a fixed blade, and I haven't even prototyped them yet. So I gotta run samples so I can actually see if I actually like them. And then once I get them, show them, see how everyone reacts to them. I don't know if I do them as a pre-order, if I just drop them. I feel like a fixed blade project may be something that's better suited as just a release. But I don't know. Like, I'm not into that part of the hobby, or the people that do the bushcraft and stuff like that. Like, that's not my shtick. And so maybe there's a bigger opportunity there than I'm aware of. There probably is. But that hasn't been why I've done anything as of yet. It's every design I've come out with has been something that I wanted very much to carry. After I sat down and sketched it, and I'm like, I would love to hold this in my hand. And that's kind of been, to me, that's been the secret sauce to why we've been successful this whole time, is because every single product I put out has been something I was truly excited about to bring out into the world. And every time I even get a shipment in, like, I don't try to, we have knives that don't work. We have lock stick or lock rock or the detent lash, or I have cases and cases of those knives that I won't release because I have a minorest problem. We don't even try to fix them at this point. They're just like, well, if I can use some parts from them later, great. Other than that, it's just a case full of spent money.
Graveyard.
Yeah. But it's important to me that, like, everyone that gets one of my knives gets that same experience. And we sell thousands of knives, so it does inevitably happen that somebody gets one that there's something wrong with. And thankfully, I'm usually in a position to just replace the knife or repair it. I think there was like one time that I wasn't able to. Somebody bought like a knife on the secondary that had like a DLC coating, and somehow they had managed to remove the coating from part of the blade. And I don't have a DLC. I can't do DLC coating. And I'm like, I'm sorry, that knife's a year old and I don't have a DLC coating, and there's nothing I can do for you on that particular one. But in general, I'm able to take care of anything that somebody needs that comes up with, even if they did buy it on the secondary. If I'm able to take care of it, the kind of rule is we just do it.
Makes sense. And I would imagine that's kind of a similar reason why we haven't seen an EMPEDC slip joint as well, right?
Same thing. It's just, I don't, like, I think I mentioned to you before, I don't own a single slip joint, like not one. My only experience with slip joints was a Swiss Army knife when I was much, much younger, and I cut myself with that damn thing immediately. It's actually one of the worst cuts I've ever had in my life. It was like to the bone.
Wow.
And so I think that just put me off of them. And I think they're cool. I love what Jack Wolf has done with modernizing them. I think that has been really cool to see somebody come into the market with this kind of ancient grandpa's knife, classic designs, because a lot of those are classic designs, just brought with modern materials, and just they look so sleek and so nice. If I did one, it would have to be still in my style, so it would have to have like our pocket clip. It would have to be a little chunky. It'd have to be aggressive. So, which, hey, there's probably some people that would love to see that, and I know our European clients will, because I do get asked about this oftentimes, because there are plenty of people all over Europe that can't have a locking knife because they're all commies. But
this is a fact. Don't get me started.
Because what are you gonna do with that? I mean, hey, even in Canada, people ask about it, which is funny because you can have these in Canada. Like I got like 100 customers in Canada that order everything I drop, and we've never had one turned away. I do hear horror stories from people that are like, "Oh, I tried to get some." Like, but did you have them just label it as what you bought, or did you have them try to send you a pocket knife listed as bubblegum? Because that's not gonna fly.
Right.
Yeah. Well, that makes sense. So what about Blade Show? You're doing Blade Show coming up here soon in Atlanta?
Yep. Nope. Really excited about it. We're in the big room this year. I do not remember my booth number. It's like 630 something. It's new. Last year we were 2207, and the year before that we were 2207. So we moved. We were in the smaller ballroom for the past 2 years, which I'm going to miss because I have a lot of friends in that room. So I really did enjoy myself in there. The biggest reason for the move is, to me at least, and I know that I'm not alone in this, that Blade Show doesn't do a good job of letting people know that the back ballroom exists. So like if you know somebody that's been to Blade Show, they're going to tell you about it. Oh, don't forget to go to the small room, because you'll find a lot of really cool custom knife makers and other smaller brands like us in there. But so the first year we went, and it was just because all the release of lockdown from COVID had happened. It was absolutely packed. It was crazy. We had a sea of people in front of us the whole show, which was really awesome. I had no voice by the end of the weekend. Last year we went, and I felt like I was lugging back everything I brought, and that we just didn't see that many people. Blade Show was busy, but if you don't know that room's there, you're not going to, you have to go all the way down this hall and around and a back thing, and then there's another little room instead of like on the main entrance where the big room is. So like I said, if you didn't know it was there, so we moved into the big room this year, and I'm excited to see how that gets us exposed to like people that wouldn't have found us otherwise, because it's always really cool to get to engage with somebody that had no idea we existed.
Yeah, for sure. And it looks like booth 639 this year.
639. I was close.
Yeah, very close. But yeah, you're 100% right. Last year at Blade Show, I didn't find the small room until the end of the first day, and it was only because my buddy was there, and I was like, where's Tom and Eddie, Notorious EDC and OEG? And he's like, let me show you. It's a weird spot, and so it was a pretty long trek to get over there.
They're directly in front of us.
Yeah, there was no like arrows or anything on the floor telling you there was anything back there. You just saw a bunch of people hanging out, flipping ballast.
No, if we were in there this year, I was literally going to bring a bunch of I was like, Jamie, we're bringing all of your friends. Jade, my daughter, I'm like, we're bringing all your friends. You guys are going to dress up like cheerleaders, and you're going to direct people. Like,
nice.
Because we're going to get found, and then we're going to help everyone else back there get found.
Yeah.
I mean, because to me, you go to Blade Show for two reasons. You go there to network and meet other makers and manufacturers and distributors, which is a big part of it. And then you go there to engage with people in the community that you wouldn't get the chance to engage with otherwise. Because marketing's a fickle thing. I mean, I don't know how much you guys talk to other makers, but like, I can't run an ad on Instagram or Facebook, and neither can they. So we can't get that reach. Even if we're willing to pay for it, we can't get that reach. And there's a big group of us right now that are getting together, trying to look for ways to either like collectively market or collectively lobby to get some of the restrictions lifted. Because it's not like we're in this community of anyone doing anything wrong. We just want to be able to reach the people that at least want to be part of the community, right?
Right.
Like, you don't need to show an 8-year-old a picture of a knife, but let the 35-year-old man that follows EMPEDC, let him see it.
Yep.
Yeah.
At least don't restrict it too. Yeah.
Yeah.
So Greg says he'll be going for the first time. Me too, Greg. I'll see you there, hopefully, brother. It'll be my first.
G-Ball's going to lose his mind.
Yeah. Me too. I've been trying to save money for Blade Show, but you know how it is. Every other week something else comes out that you have to buy. Yep. So it's one of them things. What are you going to have available? Are you going to have lots of stuff available to purchase?
No. So last year I took a bit of everything, and I think it was a little overwhelming. So this year I think we're only going to take relatives and some OTFs, and then I'll bring a couple Nimbles just to kind of have to show folks and talk about. But we're going to kind of keep our display a little bit more simple this year. And it's also good because those are the things we'll actually be stocked up on and have available. Past couple of years, I was getting real excited, showing a bunch of prototypes and things like that. And it did drum up a lot of interest, but I feel like sometimes you get paralysis by analysis. Does that make any sense?
Yep.
There's just so many things. And then they lock in and they're like, oh, this is so cool. I want this. Yep, that's coming out in 6 months. Oh,
right. Yeah.
Right. So I'm like, you know what? I did that to about 2,000 people, and I just don't want to do that again. You know, when somebody's so interested in something, I want them to be able to get a hold of it, at least in a reasonable time frame. So I kind of decided going forward when we do trade shows, I might take a couple of things to tease people with, like I'll have one of these ridiculous OTFs, which we are actually making, to show people, but it's kind of going to be off to the side, and I might just be like, here, hey, check this out to some folks, but it's not going to be like the center stage, like the relatives and the regular OTFs are going to be center stage.
Yeah, and I think you used the perfect word to describe Blade Show, and that's overwhelming.
Yeah.
You can't see everything. I know, like last year, I had a whole list of people I wanted to meet up with, not even vendors, just people I wanted to meet up with, and I didn't make it to half the tables. I didn't meet up with half the people. So
yeah, and for me, like I said, the biggest part to me is I like to go and meet like the makers that I look up. Like there's plenty of people I look up to, and I like to go chat with them and show my work and ask them questions, and because sometimes people see things in a way you don't. They can help you kind of improve stuff. And then, yeah, just the people, like, to me, it's just one big social outing, even though it's a lot of work.
We're running up against time here, but tell us, so I got to know, who are some of the designers that you admire and look up to?
So, I mean, Daryl Caston has probably affected my work more than any single maker. And you can see it in some of the early stuff, like the Nimble. It's kind of designed a little bit based off of his Harlock design, which is a very tiny, teeny spear point knife, but it had kind of that aggressive vibe to it, and so that kind of affected like that part of my work. Also, like he's where I got the idea to do the blasting inside of the chamfered area. He kind of inspired that because he has some oval chamfers on some of his knives that are just they're blasted. There's no hole, but it's like a bowled out area, and I really liked that, and I'm like, I want to use that somehow in a way that's not the same as how he used it. So that, and then Custom Knife Factory, Berg Blades, those guys, and a Smock Knives. The Smock, obviously the Nimble has some Smock influence, especially in the way that the handle's shaped here. So those guys kind of were big influences on designing some of the first couple knives that I designed, and then obviously I've kind of iterated off of those designs, so in a way that they are still affecting the stuff I make till today.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, I'm excited to see Daryl's designs going licensed to like CRKT now. It's really feel like I've seen so much more of them this year than I ever have before.
I feel like you're going to start to see a lot more of them because I think he's pushing more to do that, and I would like to do it. there's only a few companies I would like to license my stuff to right now, and so far I haven't gotten any yeses from them because I'm also not willing to do it for like 2% because they will bend you over if you let them.
Yeah,
that
makes sense.
All right, we're up against the clock here, Jake. You got anything else?
Nothing pressing. Just want to kind of give you the floor. Anything you want to present? Anything we didn't get to that you wanted to talk about?
No, I think it was a great time. If the community had any last minute questions, I'm happy to answer them. But it was fun. I look forward to seeing you guys in Atlanta. That's cool to find out you guys are going to come down there. So definitely make sure you stop by and say hi. And check out some of the stuff that we have that you guys don't already have. But yeah, that was a good time, guys. I'm looking forward to. I guess I'll just say it one last time. Why not do a plug?
Yeah, there you go.
But relatives are going to come up within the next 2 weeks. So if you're not signed up for the EMPEDC newsletter, make sure you hit the site, sign up for the newsletter because we'll send the drop announcement out for these pretty soon. And we're also going to have a couple of drops this summer that are exclusively for the newsletter group. So there'll be some different versions of things that go up that if you're not part of that group, you ain't going to know they exist. Not until somebody puts a picture on Instagram.
I can confirm if you do not have any of John's knives, you need to because they are among the very best. And I also need to thank Greg G-Ball for turning me on to your stuff. He was not wrong. I love what you're doing, brother, and I wish you continued success. And we will see you at Blade Show. And thank you so much for joining us. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me on, guys. Have a good night.
You got it.
Yeah, and we'll hang out a little bit after the stream, but thanks everyone so much for watching. Thanks to our moderator team. I think Incognito has been holding it down this week, always with the name change, but thank you for everyone who tuned in. We appreciate it.
Yes, sir. Y'all have a good one.